Good morning and good afternoon. My name is Heinz-Jürgen Scherer from TransWare AG, and we are happy to present you today the webinar about business process-driven requirements and risk testing. So first to start with a short introduction of the company and presenters. The company is named TransWare AG. TransWare is an independent software vendor. The headquarters is in Germany and a subsidiary in St. Petersburg, Florida, US. TransWare does global business with partners around the world, especially in consulting and software projects. We are specialized in model transformations, models coming from enterprise architecture or business process modeling, and do test automation using the BPM-X software. The BPM-X software is a registered trademark and a standard product of TransWare AG. My name is Heinz-Jürgen Scherer. I'm CEO of TransWare and since 30 years in software business and specialized for agile methodologies, continuous delivery, enterprise architecture, BPM and quality management. And I'm happy to introduce Volker Rautenberg. Volker Rautenberg, my colleague. We work since a long time together. He has the same, let's say, specializing in enterprise architecture and BPM and quality management. And Volker will present the live part of this webinar. I will start with some slides to give you an overview about the situation in companies and organizations, and especially about requirements and risk management. Let me start that requirements in general are not only functional and non-functional items. So modeling requirements helps you to understand the system's external behavior. So a system might be legacy software, ERP software, standard or non-standard. And it describes separately from the internal technology and design how a system behaves or shall behave. It describes the user and stakeholder needs and desires, and therefore especially in the business language. It builds a consistent glossary of terms that will be used through the project by all participants to give understanding. It reduces gaps and inconsistency by having a clear documentation and a breakdown of requirements. And especially it gives the order which features should be developed, especially in agile projects, not only if you're building classically by waterfall baselines and iterations, so doing continuous delivery by having increments of functionality. And models are a basis for system tests. And here we start with our webinar to see how we can leverage existing system documentation to build test cases, test scripts for execution, and to do coverage testing of requirements and risks. And there's not only one way to describe requirements. It can be simply an Excel sheet, or tools like DOORS, IBM Prerequisite Pro and others. And we have many ways to describe that. In UML, we can use use case diagram to describe how a system is used, activity diagrams showing workflows between users, and sequence diagram, for example, showing interactions between users and systems. So from the technical side, UML mostly is used, or SysML. On the business side, the standard of BPMN has established. So as we focus on the business side for requirements and risk management, we use today for our live part BPMN to model requirements. And we talk about how to build a system model as a single point of truth. As it's claimed by many vendors and tools, we like to show you the methodology how to construct such a single point of truth by a best-of-breed approach. So describing visually the system behavior gives the benefit that people can see and understand. Here we can see a modeling language like BPMN. It's used to describe and depict the system behavior, the interactions of the participants, the humans and systems. BPM-N, it's a standard, and tasks and descriptions are describing the logic of the process flow. Requirements and risks can be visually modeled by having specific symbols assigned to tasks that are implementing the risk or having that are implementing a requirement or having a risk or the process itself. The methodology to building such a single point of truth starts with a top-down approach. So on the one hand, on the left side, we have the requirement and risk analysis and modeling. And we have a team of requirements engineers or business analysts gathering the requirements from the stakeholders. It's a breakdown of requirements from a top level to deeper levels, with finally having the functional requirements. And it can be modeled visually using a tool. We will demonstrate today with two tools using Aris and System Architect to demonstrate how those tools can be used to generate test cases and coverage testing. On the other hand, on the right side, the business process analysis and modeling happens, also with a top-down approach. There might be another team or the same team gathering the high-level organizational structures, how the organization has a breakdown in departments, what are the business and functional levels, so for the different business departments, for financials, for accounts payable, accounts, etc. And it goes down to the deeper levels. Then it starts on the implementation level. This might be level 3 or 4 with a breakdown on high and deeper process levels, where IT helps to perform specific functionality. For the requirements and risks, they are assigned from the implementation level to the requirements definitions. And the team now merges both sides. This has the benefit that the requirements and risk team can work independently. The business process BAs can work independently, creating their breakdown. And finally, they assign how the system supports requirements and might have risks in the process. All this shall happen in a single repository in a database. So this database usually is managed by a modeling tool, an EA or BPA, business process analyzing tool, using such a database. So the teams can work independently and the content finally is mapped together. What are the challenges and the solution here? We have many, many tools in the market, so there's not a single tool to describe requirements. And there are many different test execution or test management systems in the market. And there's not one single methodology to have such a breakdown, to have a modeling language. So for a breakdown, BPM-N alone is not sufficient. Usually there are value-added chains, there are function trees for breakdown, there are organizational charts, and BPM-N comes into the game on the implementation level to describe system behavior and the system under test. The BPM-X software, developed by TransWare and offered as a standard product, is a middleware. So this middleware is a missing part in this complex puzzle of tools, methodologies, and approaches. This BPM-X software links that plentiful magnitude of numbers of tools, and we have seen many projects where not one single tool is used to describe the system documentation. For example, the ERP blueprint of an SAP system. And the BPM-X tool connects to an SDLC, to a connected, linked SDLC for continuous delivery in agile projects. And it's very important to have no media breaks, to have a continuous delivery if you go into iterations of added functionality for regression testing in user acceptance testing, for example. The tool landscape that we will demonstrate live today, that will be shown by Volker, it starts with system behavior modeling, say it's a blueprint, it's a process flow, and add it with requirements and risks. We use the tool software Aris, and to demonstrate that we are not relying on a single tool, we use Sparx Enterprise Architect for modeling, for example, requirements and flows. On the testing sides, the BPM-X tool supports all the leading testing environments. We are using the market leader, that's HP ALM, for demonstrating, as we have us limited to a 30-minute webinar. And we demonstrate in HP ALM how requirements and test cases are executed. The linkage between both sides, from the requirement sides, having the desire of a system, and the execution side of the test cases, is done by the BPM-X middleware. The BPM-X middleware uses web service to link and upload directly into the testing system. So there's no need to create Excel sheets to manually upload and link. It's done automatically. So the steps are described with a breakdown. The methodology was described by having a top-down approach, define requirements, define the business flows, the interactions, the behavior, and link both sides together. Generating the test cases by having BPM-X, it's using the model-based testing approach to directly read the documentation, the blueprint, the system documentation, and generate, using web service, the test cases directly in HP ALM and loading the requirements into the tool. So what's the difference between requirements and risks in modeling and testing? For sure, there's a difference. So semantically, absolutely, it's difference on both sides. Technically speaking, it's not really a difference in the tools. Semantically, requirements define the needs and behavior, mainly the inputs, the actions, a function, a task, and the output, and are defined how a system must behave. The risks describe more the business or the legal impacts, so to allow assessments of the system, especially in banking, in insurance industry, or pharmacy. There are certain requirements that may open up risks on regulations, non-compliance, legal issues, PR issues, or unexpected costs, or business impacts in any other case. Now we will show you how those risks and requirements are modeled in the tool and how they are tested in HP ALM. Using software the Aris tool, we use BPMN to model the flow, and we have specific objects customized to use requirements, that's the red triangle, and the risk with the exclamation mark, to assign risk and requirements to a task, or it might be assigned to a process. Data properties for the metadata are assigned as well. Looking to Sparx Enterprise Architect, we describe it in known diagram type as Sparx is strict to the BPMN standard, not to customize the BPMN modeling language. And then we assign with associations which functionality has a risk or which functionality supports a specific functional requirement. And this is a mapping we do, and it is an association of task and process level. ALM we use for the testing now, generating automatically the test cases with all test steps, and as you see, with a lot of metadata, test execution hints, expected results, etc. And on the other side, we upload the requirements and risk and automatically link both sides together to have the coverage, and you can expect it after execution. So this is the automatically linkage between requirements and the test cases. What is the meta model and the methodology behind? So from the modeling side, we have risks, we have requirements, and we define a process And here you can see a simple process depending on a task A. There's an XOR, a diamond, a rule. And if it goes into the yes path, we have a task B to be executed. And it goes into the no path, there's a task C to be executed. And as explained, the risks can be assigned on process and task level and requirements, for example, in this small example on task level. And for the execution side, now we use the BPM-X, pushing the data into HP ALM. The test case, there's a path. There's one path for the positive and one path for the no path. And the coverage is created automatically by assigning on process level, and this for the test case. And here the requirement for the test case A again. Why? HP ALM does assignment on test case level. So there's not an assignment on a specific task, or it's called a test step in HP. The assignment every time happens on the test case level. This is the path through a specific model. So now I like to switch to hand over to Volker to allow him for the next time to present it live. Volker.
Thank you, Heinz-Jürgen, for handing over control to me. I just want to make sure that you can properly hear me and see my screen.
All is well.
Okay, very good. So let me start. As mentioned by Heinz-Jürgen, there are two showcases for today. One will use Aris as input, and the other one will use Sparx Enterprise Architect. So I'd like to start with Aris. And let's have a brief look at how things are looking in Aris. So you've seen this picture in the slides of Heinz-Jürgen, and I'll give you some explanations about the details of this system model, your blueprint, your documentation, which is represented exactly by this model or diagram, whatever you call it. So what you can see here is a start event here in the BPMN notation, and you have two end events. One is sitting here, the other is down there. And in between, there are a couple of gateways, decisions, diamonds, needs review, approved, order acceptable, quote acceptable. So you can see that you can literally take a couple of different paths when going from here, from the start, to one of the two end events. You have to make a decision at each of these diamonds in order to go to the left, go to the right. And each of these potential paths corresponds to a test case that needs to be created. Okay, let's now look at the details. As you can see, we have some task symbols here. For instance, this inform requester. Let me show you how it looks like. So we have a couple of attributes or properties, if you like, which is sitting behind this symbol. So there, of course, is the name of the business task or activity, inform requester. In this case, we have a brief description of what this activity is about. And the following properties are important for model-based testing. So you have to enter some example data where for the test team. That's very important to know what they have to do. There is an expected result. There are execution hints for the test team. What exactly do they have to do when running this test? Okay, so this is the task or activity side and the attributes attached to this. And you can see that the requirements of these triangles up here, down there, and the risks have been directly modeled. It's not quite conformant to BPMN, but it's possible to customize it in that way in Aris. So we have this requirement, for instance, and let's also have a brief look at the metadata sitting here. We have a name, of course, and we have a description what this requirement is about. Okay, so the same is true, of course, for the risk symbol sitting here, the name and the description of the risk that is or has been documented, modeled as a blueprint for the business activities. Okay, there is another thing which I'd like to point you to. Here, the make payment activity has a drill down. So I do a double click here, and there is a sub-diagram. That is, for instance, this could be a level 5 diagram, while this purchase requisition flow could be level 4. Okay, so the same things apply here: start event, end event. In between we have business activities. Let's look at the details in order to make you see later on that this sub-diagram is really merged into the upper level one. I've simply inserted this description definition of inserted by reverse decomposition. It's much easier to see it in HP ALM. Okay, that said, that's enough for the Aris side. The Aris model can now be exported as an XML file. I've prepared that. And let me now go to the demonstration system. So you can see the BPM-X middleware already shown behind Jürgen in his slides. And yeah, so this showcase has been prepared for Aris. You can see here's a so-called chain Aris to HP ALM. I have already prepared the input. It's residing on my desktop right here. It's the XML file prepared. It's the input. Another very important parameter you can select when creating test cases is the model-based testing coverage. So we have different levels of coverages ranging from C0, meaning that a low number of test cases will be generated, up to C5, meaning a high number of test cases. The statement coverage, which I'll use for Aris, is assuring that each of these shapes, these business activities, prepare requisition, prepare request for quotation, and so on, is at least covered once in the full set of generated test cases. Okay, so these settings are about the internals of HP ALM, the IP address, the credentials, some handling parameters settings for HP. And finally, there's this tick box which enables us to write the requirements as well. So we go on. Before I step ahead, let's have a brief look at HP ALM just to assure that everything is clearly set up. So we'll look at the testing module, the test plan in particular. We'll look at the requirements as well. And for the Aris showcase, the output will be generated here into this Aris folder, and for Enterprise Architect into this EA folder. I give it just a brief refresh to make you aware that there is no contents included here. The same is true for the requirements module of HP. I give it a refresh as well. You can see there are no contents in HP ALM. I switch back to the BPM-X middleware. We have to target the output to a specific HP domain and project. Okay, the domain is selected here. Test is the project. And we have to specify, okay, the test cases will go into subject Aris. The requirements will go into this corresponding requirements folder Aris. Okay, all I have to do now is simply push this convert button. It's actually, you can consider the BPM-X middleware actually as a black box and simply push a button. That's all you have to do, and essentially to know about that. What's going on now? So the Aris model is read in by the BPM-X middleware. The mapping is done from Aris to HP ALM, and the test cases and the requirements in the final step of this processing have been written to HP ALM. Okay, so I go back to the test plan, I give it a refresh, expand it, and you see we have this purchase requisition flow here, and we have two test cases residing in HP ALM. Let me now go here to have a look. This is a very brief path, so it simply has 8 steps. You have all the information. The step name corresponds to the shape names in Aris. We have taken over the description. We have taken over the example data that needs to be entered by the test team, test hints, expected results. So the information has been fully brought over, as well as the requirements coverage. So for this first test case, the requirement, the associated requirement and risk have been carried over correctly. And let's have a look at the second one. Look at the design steps. You can see this is a much longer path, a much longer test case. It has 34 steps actually. And you can see here that the sub-diagram has been correctly included. It has been inserted by reverse decomposition, a mechanism of ours, so that you have a full end-to-end path, including several levels. And that's very important. As well, we have a requirements coverage here. So the risk, the requirement have been taken into account, and I can now simply navigate to the requirements module of HP so that we have the appropriate one selected here. And when looking from the requirements side, I open this one here, we can as well look to the test coverage and see where has this requirement been covered in a test case. And it's the answer here, it's been number 2, the second test case that has been generated. Okay, so that's been the Aris side of things. I'd like now to switch to the Enterprise Architect blueprint or system model, if you like. So it's looking more or less the same. So it's actually, except for the drill down, which we have not included here, it's absolutely the same diagram, the same process flow that is depicted, except for the details of the tool itself. So everything has been inserted here in Enterprise Architect as well. So we have a description, which has been entered in the notes pane here. We have tagged values, which display the example data, execution hints, expected result. So this has been done for each and every shape, for each and every business activity in this diagram. And we have to take now the look at the requirements side, because we want to keep this diagram, this documentation here, clean BPMN. The requirements modeling has been done here in this separate requirements diagram. So we have 2 requirements, so this one here with a description, with some properties, the names here, with a risk, here's another requirement, and the second risk. So all the metadata have been provided. And when we look at the modeling side of things, go to the properties to make sure simply that the risks and the requirements are properly attached. We can see they are represented here. They are not represented visually like the other connectors or links here above, which correspond to the connection here, to the end event, and to the gateway, the approved gateway here. So risk, requirement are properly linked to the according business activities in Enterprise Architect. Okay, let's now look to how this is translated into test cases and requirement coverage in HP ALM. I use BPM-X middleware. This time it's not Aris to HP ALM, it's Enterprise Architect to HP ALM. And the parameters, the settings are almost the same, except for the fact that I have now selected a different coverage level, C1. I proceed with more settings. It's generating the result into the same HP ALM domain and project. I'd like to make sure that everything now is going into the EA folders in HP ALM. I click Convert, push the button, consider it as a black box. What's now going on is that the Enterprise Architect input is read, so this is now the reading phase. It's taking a little bit longer because we are not reading in XML as we did for the Aris test showcase. So reading is proceeding. We are now entering the processing phase with doing the mappings and the test case computation. And we should soon enter the writing phase, which now arrived. So the test cases and requirements get written to HP ALM. It's been done successfully. I give it a refresh, go to the test plan. Okay, here we are. And we've generated 3 test cases due to the fact that I simply have selected a different coverage. Okay, so you can see, I switch here. This is a short test case. This is a longer one, including more steps. And finally, this one here with 25 steps. Okay, definitely we have the same kind of requirement coverage, and I can simply jump in to the requirements module, this time for Enterprise Architect, and for instance, look at the details of this requirement and see where it is covered in a test case. And you can clearly see here that this particular requirement is covered in test case number 2 and number 3. So Hans-Jürgen, I think that's it from my side for the live demo part.
Thank you, Volker. This was impressive. I will switch over to my screen. Is my screen visible, Volker?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so let us come to the summary of this webinar. First of all, for the value proposition of the BPM-X middleware, it's not a tool that imports data having an own editor to creating a test model. It's more for interchanging and translating the source data from the requirement side to the testing side. So it adds no new tool to your tool landscape in a project. For requirements capturing, there are many custom off-the-shelf adapters for tools like Visio, Sparx, Aris, IBM Blueworks, Casewise, we did a lot of projects, System Architect, Open Text Provision, Visagi, Camunda, and many other tools. And on the execution side, there are standard adapters, COTS, custom off-the-shelf, for HP ALM, Microsoft Team Foundation Server, JIRA, Zephyr, TestLink, or simply Excellent. And there is a flexible configuration that constructs the mapping mentioned by Volker, and that links the delivered documentation within a turnkey project for the BPM-X delivery. The benefits are that the BPM-X is a tool and that is really tool and modeling language agnostic. That means for consulting companies, it's not required to adjust or to modify their methodology. So the BPM-X tool is flexible and follows the methodology of the consulting firm. The system model is directly used and not an additional test model is created. For sure, this reduces the work, and also here there is no additional training for the team. The team uses the tools that are from the customer side given, or uses their own existing modeling tools and testing tools. So there's no additional support required to establish the integration of the test cases with the test system. The business knowledge is transferred, the methodology is a top-down, and finally having the implementation level linked to requirements and tests, the testing team adds metadata to the implementation level. As shown by Volker, we add, for example, expected results, test data, and other information. So media breaks does not exist, and there are no redundancies, and there's a single point of truth in the repository of the modeling tool. And especially for agile projects, there are faster turnarounds, and especially for functional increments and regression testing, by seeing the impacts if something will change or has changed, delivers faster turnarounds of the UAT, might be manual or automated. So we have got a number of questions. Only 2 questions we will grab out. And here, the first question, Volker, is how about customizing of the modeling language and the tool? We have in our project specific objects and data. that we capture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, can you hear me, Hans-Jürgen?
Yes.
Okay, very good. So, yeah, customization is not a big thing for us because we have an open meta model in the BPM-X middleware. So we can literally, yeah, consume all of your customizations. And I would like to underline that this not only applies to the source side, for instance, Aris or Enterprise Architect, which we have seen today. Both of these tools, Aris, for instance, can be customized. Enterprise Architect, in the same way, can be customized in terms of the modeling language, in terms of diagram types, element types, object types, attributes, properties, and so on. And we consume this into our meta model. The same is also true regarding the target side. If you look at HP, for instance, you can do your own customizations in HP. And if you like to see certain special things in HP, we can also adjust our method to your specific HP ALM customizations.
Okay, Volker, thank you. Just one question, and then to finish that webinar, looking.
Yeah, so let me pick up another one which seems very important to me. Is it possible to use external tools like DOORS or IBM Prerequisite Pro for requirements and risk management?
Yeah, this happens many times. So the teams are not using a single tool like Aris or Sparx or Casewise, however they are named. They're using a known tool. It might be Excel, DOORS, or another tool. Very important that all of those tools have a unique ID per requirement, and we link those unique IDs to the model. That means in the business model, on the task side or process side, we add a custom property adding the unique ID of the risk or of the requirement. And that's it. Then the BPM-X tool with an adapter can merge the data from requirement side with the modeling side, brings both sides together and push that information into HP ALM. So by simply having an additional data property that links the information. Okay. So more information you will get at our TransWare website, especially at our blog where we talk about projects and new technologies. We have a YouTube channel and we will share the recording at YouTube and also at SlideShare. And upcoming webinars, you are kindly invited. Subjects of matter we present, for example, is data generating. That means we can generate the data that is required for testing, for preconditions and fast conditions. We will talk about new testing tools or integrations, for example, Microsoft Team Foundation Server, and one of the hot topics are cloud testing. Thank you very much for your presence and have a good day. Bye-bye.